Chapter 3. The children and Peter Pan traveled a long distance. They spent many days on their journey. They crossed many plains and lands to reach the Land of Wishes. Finally, one day Peter shouted,
"We've arrived! This is the Land of Wishes, a truly magical place!"
The Land of Wishes was a large island with beautiful shores. The children stopped and looked at the island from afar. It was strange. The Island of Wishes didn't feel unfamiliar to them at all. John shouted.
"It actually has a swamp, you know,"
Michael said.
Oh, look at the turtles. They're carefully hiding their eggs under the sand. There's even a flamingo with a broken leg.
Wendy said excitedly.
There's a cave, too. There's a wolf. The wolf is hiding with her cubs among the reeds. Let's look at the Indian tents. From the smoke rising up, it's clear they're preparing for war.
The children knew a lot about the island. Peter felt upset. He wanted to be the leader of the children himself. When night fell, an unfamiliar fear gripped the children. When they were at home, before going to sleep, they would turn on their nightlights so the land of dreams wouldn't be scary. In the faint glow of the nightlight, the unexplored parts of the imaginary island didn't seem frightening. But now things were different. The children were in the heart of the island. There was no sign of a nightlight or their mother's comforting words. At home, if an animal growled or a dark shadow moved, they would quickly open their eyes so the scary creature would disappear. But what about now? Now that the Land of Dreams was no longer imaginary? On the island, there was no nightlight anymore. On top of that, it was getting darker by the minute. The children clung to Peter and flew along. Sometimes they flew so low that the branches and leaves brushed against their faces, but they pushed through and kept moving forward. Wendy was very tired. She asked Peter if they could land and rest, but Peter said it wasn't time to land yet. Peter woke up Tinker Bell, who had been sleeping on his shoulder. He asked her to look around and check things out. Tinker Bell searched around them and came back. She quickly whispered something to Peter and then disappeared again. Peter laughed. He said to the children,
Food first or adventure?
Wendy quickly and clearly replied.
Food first.
John asked.
What adventure?
Peter said.
Right down there in the thicket, a pirate is sleeping. Let's go down and deal with him.
John said fearfully.
What if he, wakes up?
Peter said angrily and clearly.
I don't take anyone out while they're asleep. First we'll wake him up. How many pirates are on the island? Not many. A few brave warriors together with the infamous Captain Hook.
The children had heard of Captain Hook's reputation. As soon as Michael heard Hook's name, he started to cry. John swallowed hard and thought that Hook was the worst of all the pirates, Peter said.
Don't be afraid. Hook isn't as big as he used to be. I cut off a piece of him. Hook doesn't have a right hand.
The children were surprised, Peter said.
In a fierce battle, I cut off his right hand. Now instead, he has an iron hook that he uses to claw at people. But you have to promise not to be around me during a fight or hand-to-hand combat. I want to face him alone myself.
John, like a loyal soldier, said,
We absolutely promise.
Tinker Bell caught up with Peter and the children. She lit up the surroundings with her light and said,
Be careful. The pirates know they're coming.
Peter said,
The pirates might have seen Tinker Bell's light. If they guess we're close, they'll shoot at us.
The children got scared. John and Michael shouted,
Peter, tell her to stay away from us. Tinker Bell thinks if she doesn't shine her light, we'll lose our way. Of course, she's scared too. It's not right to leave her alone. Then tell her to turn off her light. Fairies are like stars. They can't turn off their light.
Suddenly, an idea came to Peter's mind.
That's it. John's hat. John, hide Tinker Bell in your hat.
Tinker Bell agreed to go into the hat. Wendy took the hat from John. Tinker Bell didn't like being in Wendy's hand. That's why she kept grumbling. They were all flying in silence when I heard a loud snorting sound. Peter said, I think some animal is drinking water from the river. A little later, we heard the sound of something being filed. Peter said, the Indians are sharpening their knives. As we went further, everything became completely silent. Michael was afraid of the silence. At that moment, he heard a loud sound like thunder in the sky. The pirates fired their guns. The echo of the gunshots rang out through the mountains. The children were terrified. When the noise died down, John and Michael realized something. They were left alone in the darkness. John asked, Were you shot? No one had been shot, but the shockwave from the gunfire knocked Peter over. He had also been carried higher over the sea along with Tinker Bell. Tinker Bell had fallen out of the hat and was flying in the sky. No matter how much Wendy pleaded, Tinker Bell wouldn't come back. Tinker Bell didn't like Wendy at all. She was flying in the sky to get away from Wendy. When Peter returned to the island, it was as if the island came alive again. He hadn't been there. Without Peter Pan, the island was quiet and lifeless. As soon as the Lost Boys saw Peter, they ran to greet him. The boys, knives in hand, ran toward Peter Pan. The boys were wearing bear skins. They had become so fat and furry that when they fell to the ground, they would roll over. Tootles was the first boy to reach Peter. Tootles was very unlucky. Important adventures always happened when he wasn't around. When he went to gather firewood, the battle would have already happened and ended before he got back. Poor Tootles was always depressed and frowned in such a way that everyone felt sorry for him. The next boy was Nibs. A cheerful and carefree boy, he had made a flute out of a piece of wood and was following Slightly. Slightly was the most self-centered of them all. The next lost boy was Curly, a mischievous and naughty boy whom only Peter could handle. The last members of the group were the twins. The twins were always together. They were so quiet that they bored everyone. Even the pirates were surprised to see Peter. Captain Hook was sitting on a carriage, gathering his men around him. The captain waved his right hand, which had an iron hook in the air, and shouted. Captain Hook had dark skin, long curly hair, and blue eyes. But when he threw his hook at someone, his eyes would blaze like fireballs. Captain Hook knew a ton of stories. He was a brave and invincible man, but he had one weakness. He was afraid of his own blood, which had an unusual color. As soon as the pirates saw Peter, they quietly slipped through the branches and leaves of the trees. The Native Americans, who didn't like to come face to face with the boys and the pirates, saw Peter from afar. One of the boys said happily, "I wish Peter would tell the story of Cinderella sooner. The story of Cinderella reminds me of my mother." "I'm sure my mother looks like Cinderella." The boys were only allowed to talk about their mothers when Peter wasn't around. When Peter came, no one was supposed to mention their family. Peter didn't like this kind of sentimentality at all. Suddenly, the terrifying singing of the pirates rang out. Everyone except Nibs ran behind the trees. Nibs bravely stood in the path of the pirates. One of the pirates shouted, "I'll shoot one of the boys, Captain!" Captain Hook yelled, "Idiot! If the Native Americans hear your gunshot, they'll come after us." Another pirate said, "Captain, do you want me to go after him and bring him here?" Hook replied gruffly, "No, I want all 7 of them together. Bring all 7 of them to me." The pirates obeyed their captain and went into the trees. Captain Hook shouted angrily, "If I get my hands on Peter Pan, I know what I'll do to him. That little brat cut off my hand. I'll show him who he's dealing with." Captain Hook looked at his hand and said, "Peter threw my hand to the crocodile. The crocodile liked the taste of my hand so much that it's been chasing me ever since." Hook sat on a big mushroom, shook his head and said,
Ahem, ahem, I was lucky. The crocodile bit my hand along with my wristwatch. Now, whenever it gets close, I hear the ticking sound and run away.
Hook shifted a little. He felt it was getting very hot underneath him. Suddenly he jumped up and shouted,
Oh no! Ah, I'm burning! Please help!
Hook struggled to pull the mushroom out of the ground to see why it was so hot. As soon as the mushroom came out of the soil, thick smoke started pouring out of it. Hook screamed.
Oh wow, look at that, a chimney!
Yes, Hook had mistakenly thought that the underground house's chimney was actually a mushroom. Hook heard the children's voices coming from under the chimney. He realized the underground house was the children's hideout. Hook cautiously called his assistant. He quietly pointed to the underground house and said,
Come over here. They're hiding right here, concealing themselves.
Hook's assistant ran his hand over his sword and said,
I can hear their voices. Captain, what's your plan?
Hook slowly shook his head. Through his tightly clenched teeth, he said,
We'll bake a big cake. We'll decorate it with green sugar on top. We'll place the cake on the shore of the Mermaid Lagoon. When the boys are playing there, they'll see the cake. They don't have a mother to warn them. A cake left out in the heat goes bad. The boys will eat the cake and get poisoned. Just like that.
Hook's assistant laughed. He really liked the plan. Hook and his assistant were plotting when a ticking sound approached them. Suddenly, Hook panicked. It was him, the crocodile, the very same crocodile that had eaten Hook's hand along with his watch. The boys came out of their hideout. Suddenly, Nibs, who had been hiding behind the trees the whole time, ran toward them and said,
The wolves.
The boys didn't know what to do. They remembered Peter. One of them said,
If Peter were here right now, he'd absolutely know what to do.
Suddenly, one of them remembered. At times like this, Peter would bend down and look at the wolves through his legs. They all bent down and stared at the wolves. As soon as the wolves saw what the boys were doing, they tucked their tails and ran away. Nibs got up from the ground. This time he shouted,
Look!
There's a big white bird in the sky. It looks really tired.
Above the boys' heads was Wendy, not a bird. The boys heard Tinker Bell scream. Tinker Bell was sitting behind Wendy and shouting,
Danger! Danger!
Peter urgently told the bird that was carrying me to shoot at it immediately.
As soon as the boys heard Peter's order, they quickly readied their slingshots. The boys fired their arrows and Wendy fell to the ground. Tootles stood over Wendy. Pride shouted loud.
I just hit her.
Tinker Bell muttered something under her breath and disappeared. Everyone gathered around Wendy. They just realized that what they had hit wasn't a bird. Tootles said,
Peter had sent the girl to her. She had come to take care of us.
Tootles' face turned as white as chalk. He sat down on the ground and said,
In my dreams I make every woman a mother. But when I'm awake, I shot a woman with an arrow. But why?
Tootles lowered his head and left. The boys felt sorry for Tootles and called out to him, but Tootles, who was afraid of Peter, quickly hid himself. At that very moment, Peter noisily announced his return. The boys quickly hid Wendy among the bushes. They themselves stood in a row in front of Wendy. Peter shouted happily.
Hello, boys. Why are you all so quiet?
The boys stomped their feet on the ground, but still didn't say anything. It was as if they couldn't open their mouths. Peter shouted,
I've brought you some good news. A mother.
The boys stared at Peter in astonishment. Peter said,
Her name is Wendy, and she came ahead of me. Didn't you see her?
Tootles quietly came out of his hiding place.
Twins, could you please move aside so that Peter can see?
Everyone stepped aside. Peter saw Wendy unconscious among the bushes. He said sadly,
Is she scared?
No one said anything. Peter moved closer. Suddenly, he saw that a large arrow had pierced the girl's body. He gently pulled the arrow out. He held the arrow up and shouted angrily.
Whose arrow is this?
Tootles lowered his head and muttered under his breath.
Mine.
Peter angrily raised the arrow. He held the arrow above his head like a dagger. Tootles didn't back away. He puffed out his chest and said firmly,
Do it, Peter.
Peter accidentally dropped the arrow carefully.
No, I can't.
Everyone looked at Peter in surprise. Suddenly, Nibs pointed at Wendy and shouted,
Look! She moved her hand. I think she's alive.
Peter knelt down beside Wendy. Wendy shook her head and gave Peter a faint smile. Peter spoke to Wendy softly. He asked her to get well soon so he could show her the mermaids. Wendy didn't have the strength to reply. A little farther away, the sound of Tinker Bell crying could be heard. Tinker Bell was upset that Wendy had survived. The children told Peter what had happened. Peter became very angry with Tinker Bell. He told Tinker Bell angrily that they were no longer friends. Tinker Bell flew over sadly and sat on Peter's shoulder. She begged Peter to forgive her, but Peter brushed Tinker Bell off his shoulder. Wendy raised her hand and said softly,
Peter, just be mad at her for a week.
Instead of thanking Wendy, Tinker Bell turned away and sat at the top of the tree. She wanted to pinch Wendy. Curly suggested they take Wendy home, but Peter said that moving Wendy in this condition would be dangerous. It would be better to build a little house around her to keep her safe. Everyone welcomed his suggestion. Peter said,
Bring all the things that we might possibly need.
The boys sprang into action. They ran here and there, bringing everything that was needed. At that moment, John and Michael arrived too. Both John and Michael had been sleeping in the sky and, carried by the wind, had drifted toward Peter and Wendy. As soon as John saw Wendy, he asked,
Wendy is still asleep right now. Let's gently wake her up so that she can get up and make us some delicious food.
As soon as the boys heard this, they lowered their heads and worked even faster. Peter ordered,
Curly, put these two boys to work as well.
Peter turned to John and Michael and said,
We're going to build a house for Wendy. You have to serve her too.
The two brothers, who were quite confused, had no choice but to work like the others. Peter ordered them to bring the chairs and the wall heater from the underground house and build the house around them. Peter called for Slightly. He asked him to quickly bring a doctor. Slightly said aye aye and disappeared. A few minutes later, Slightly returned with John's hat. He straightened the hat on his head and asked,
Where's the patient? I'm the doctor.
Peter pointed at Wendy with his hand. Slightly took a bottle out of his pocket. He gave Wendy the contents of the bottle and said,
I'll check on her again. Let's give her some liquid. Put a straw or a cup so she can sip the liquid. The liquid is good for her.
Slightly handed the hat back to John. He breathed a sigh of relief and became Slightly again. John and Michael looked at Slightly in surprise. One of the boys said,
Why are you standing around? What kind of house does your sister like?
The boys looked at Wendy. Wendy opened and closed her mouth. Peter whispered in her ear.
Wendy, tell us what kind of house you want.
Without opening her eyes, Wendy murmured under her breath,
I wish I had a pretty little house with a roof made of green moss. I wish my house had red walls.
The boys laughed with joy. Everything was just as Wendy wanted. The floor of the cottage was carpeted with moss. The boys built the walls, and they put a window in the cottage. Peter shouted,
Bring the secret flower.
The children quickly filled the area around the house with roses. The house was finally built. Before Peter could look for the door latch, Tootles took off one of his shoes and used it as a latch for the door. For the chimney, he took John's hat off his head and put it on the roof. Smoke rose into the air from the hat.